Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, and I want to thank you for joining me today. There's those times when you read a text three or four, I don't know, 10 times, and suddenly you read it for if you read it 10 times and suddenly you read it for the 11th time, and suddenly something stands out to you that you didn't see the first time. And this was my experience here with the Truth Social post from President Trump. Obviously, there's so much to comment on in this post. This 180 degree move towards this warlike position, which we had not seen previously, at least not exposed in this way. Although I saw before he even was before he even became president, he already was on board with the Kellogg plan, which was basically freeze the conflict on the contact line plan, and that was basically to conserve the greatest part of Ukraine for the United States to move in NATO. So but anyway, if we're talking about a conflict in Europe, the military organization in Europe that handles what they call defense, which is really offense, it was defensive until '91 when the Soviet Union fell, and then it went on a bombing campaign in Serbia. On a um, it became a war machine in Iraq during the Iraq War. NATO was involved in the bombing of Libya, and they've carried out many offensive operations. So once the Soviet Union fell, the chains were came off NATO, and they became this aggressive um, offensive organization. So you would think that now that President Trump is going to announce, okay, uh, you know, let's organize ourselves better and we can help Ukraine win this war, you would say, well, this is a clear sign that, this 2% and soon to be 5% of the GDP of each country that belongs to NATO would mean something. So you would say NATO this and NATO that. But no, you say here in this post, I think Ukraine, with the support I've highlighted here, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win. So this is military talk. This is fight. This talking about military equipment and material support, possibly soldiers. Um, and so you would think, well, he's going to talk about NATO, but no, he says European Union. So basically, the European Union has been, in Trump's mind at least, has been captured by his administration. They are a prisoner of his foreign policy. So now President Trump wants to wind down this U.S. proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. The tide started to turn against Ukraine in 2023. And since then, Russia's been gaining ground, gaining ground. And so President Trump, when he came in office, the first thing he wanted to do was, take this Kellogg plan, which basically was stop the conflict on the contact line, and that was going to conserve the greatest part of Ukraine for the United States. To do what? To bring in the military force, put in bases, say that not a single inch will be touched by Russia. And so if they put any kind of missiles in Ukraine in any part, and Russia goes to knock out those missiles, then they would invoke Article 5. So this is the whole purpose of this war. It has nothing to do with freeing Ukrainians or about this fictitious democracy that's supposedly in Ukraine. If you want to know about their democracy, all you have to do is just look at the free speech laws and about the constraints on the population. So obviously, you're not going to hear anything negative from Ukrainians about their country, because if they say that, they could be in jail. Their house could be seized. Their bank accounts could be seized. they could lose their vehicle, they would obviously lose their job, they would be published as a traitor. Uh, Even if they were to say that Russia is gaining on the front line, which they are. So this has become a totalitarian state. It lost any idea of democracy in 2014 when the democratically elected government was removed through a coup d'etat. So anyway, the United States went to all this work, spent all this time, spent all this money. We're thinking about 350 billion, and they had their elite regime change and country building organizations in Ukraine, which was the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy. They had the USAID. They've had the CIA in charge of the Ukrainian FSB, which is their, I guess you call it their KGB, since 2014, and they've put out this ultra nationalist talk, which um, shows that they're not interested in peace or respecting the rights of the ethnic Russians. So anyway, getting back to this point, you would think that with the United States focused on conserving the greatest part of Ukraine for its basically to incorporate into NATO or the European Union. At this point, you can see in this post that it's the same thing. So anyway, President Donald Trump is already starting to show the shift between NATO and the European Union. So anyway, I think we need to look at that text and say that's not a typo, that's not a mistake. The European Union is basically NATO. So European Union, which was formed as an economic organization to help the European countries advance economically and to have a means of overcoming all these um, different rules and laws that every country had to move commerce. The European Union was to smooth all that out and to improve commerce. Then they built the euro. So anyway, the little by little they've been forming this economic or union. But now we can see the European Union is being morphed into a kind of a giant um, control surveillance state and a military organization and an organization that could that controls the elections, the so-called democratic elections in many countries. We know that for the election in Moldova, for that elected Maya Sandu, the United States poured millions of dollars in to that campaign, and they limited the ability of certain voters to be able to vote. So the election was a phony election. In Romania, the opposition to Georgescu placed ads in favor of Georgescu in social media, and then they said that Russia was behind it, and they talked about Russian bots and all kinds of stuff, and they got people confused. And there was no evidence to support anything, but when they investigated it, they found out that the opposition party put those ads in, and so. But still, a court outlawed Georgescu as a Russian agent. So this is all the reach of the European Union to be able to manipulate elections and control the outcomes. So you can see that the European Union is no longer an economic union, but is morphing into this totalitarian organization with military, and the that they will remove the sovereignty from each country, and they will all become kind of like one giant mass controlled from Brussels. So this is kind of the way the things are going. But President Trump has completely captured that. We knew that when van der Leyen met with Trump in Scotland for the economic agreement that they made, that this was a that the United States could put goods into Europe tariff free, and the Europeans, I think they had like 15% tariffs. So this was and also they committed to buy, I think it was 700 billion in LNG or energy products. So this was a totally bad deal. But van der Leyen said it was the only one they had available. So this is where the European Union is. Now it's becoming captured by the United States, and the United States can now control all of Europe through Brussels. And but this European Union, which was an economic organization, is heading towards being a military organization. The idea of NATO will disappear, and they will morph into a European Union army, and then they will have conscription, and they will form large militaries, and then they will just constantly carry out wars with Russia until Russia says enough, and then they mobilize their population and they sweep through, and Brussels is no more. So anyway, this is the point I saw in the True Social post, and I thought it was important to point out. And then I just wanted to add in another. You can see here on the right side of the screen. See if I can highlight that. No, it's an image, so I can't. But anyway, it says last night, in response to a terrorist strike against civilian targets on the territory of Faros, Republic of Crimea, that killed and injured civilians. Okay, so Russia has used terrorist attack in the past, and you say, well, they can say what they like. But words are very important for the Russians. They don't use the word terrorist very often. So they used it before in the Chechnya conflict. So as we see this term terrorist strike come in, uh, we know that they're moving closer and closer to declaring Ukraine a terrorist state. And if they do that, they can target their leadership. They can target basically any infrastructure in their country. They're no longer limited to military targets. So anyway, we will see where this goes. But after this war mongering post from President Trump, and on the other hand, we see the Russians moving towards declaring Ukraine a terrorist state so that they can increase they can expand the targets so that they can finish this conflict. Um, and you say, well, they want to finish it because they're losing. No, they want to finish it because they want something left of Ukraine. Ukraine has lost more than a million, anywhere between 1 million and 1,800,000 soldiers. So um, they if they can win the war, and at the end there will be no population in Ukraine. So um, very little as far as that age group, the 20 to maybe 23 to 60. So anyway, I think the Russians still consider the Ukrainians as brothers, but this group that's in charge of Ukraine could certainly be considered terrorists, and they could declare them as a terrorist state, and then we would definitely see an escalation in this conflict. So anyway, this is where we stand here in the morning of Wednesday, September 24th. And thank you for joining me if you've reached this far into my video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and share with your friends. Your support helps independent journalism. So thank you again, and I wish you a good day. Farewell.